Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to crack open a really big deal, that $8 billion one from 2018.
Right, the General Mills and Blue Buffalo acquisition. Big news back then.
Exactly. And it wasn't just, the huge price tag. It's more like a window, isn't it?
hmm
Into the hidden forces shaping what we eat.
And what we feed our pets, yeah. It's a fascinating case study.
It really is. Think of it like a blueprint. By looking at why General Mills did this, you get these crucial insights into how big companies try to, well, read the tea leaves on consumer behavior.
And how they bet on future trends. It really boils down to smart market research, understanding the why behind the what.
And that's kind of the why now for us, right? This whole thing is just a masterclass in how spotting shifts in what people want and even where they want it drives these massive corporate chess moves.
Couldn't agree more.
Our guide for this is a really interesting piece that just came out from Cognitive Market Research. It's called Understanding Regional Preferences, the Impact of Market Research on General Mills' Acquisition of Blue Buffalo.
Yeah, it digs into the market research and the consumer insights that were really behind the scenes.
So our mission today is basically to pull out the key lessons. How did General Mills spot these consumer trends, these regional differences, and then actually act on them to buy Blue Buffalo? We want to give you the fast track to understanding this major business play.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Okay, let's set the scene. What was happening at General Mills around, say, the mid-2010s that made them suddenly look over at the pet food aisle?
Well, General Mills was kind of in a tough spot like a lot of the big established food companies back then.
How so?
Growth in their classic lines,
Yeah.
you know, cereals, baking mixes, snacks, it had really slowed down, stagnated even.
Right. People were starting to look for different things, weren't they? Fresher options, maybe more organic stuff.
Exactly. Dietary habits were shifting. Plus, you had all these smaller niche brands popping up, increasing competition.
Okay, so their core business was facing some pressure,
Definitely. Now, contrast that with the pet food market at the same time.
which was booming.
Absolutely booming. But it wasn't just more pets. The key thing was how people saw their pets. It was a fundamental shift.
Yeah, the whole pets are family movement. You see it everywhere.
Precisely. People were treating their pets like children, basically, investing way more in their health, their nutrition, their well-being.
So how did General Mills connect those dots using research? Did they see this pet trend early?
Their market research really lit up some powerful trends, especially among millennial and Gen X pet owners. And here's where it gets interesting, the regional part.
Okay.
It wasn't uniform. Places like the Pacific Northwest, California, the Northeast, these areas showed a really strong growing demand for pet food that mirrored human health trends.
You mean like natural, grain-free, that kind of thing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Natural ingredients, grain-free formulas, high protein content. That's what these specific consumers were actively looking for.
So it wasn't just a general feeling nationwide, it was concentrated.
Very much so. And this geographically specific demand made the whole pet food market look incredibly attractive to a company like General Mills.
Because?
Well, think about it. It was a high-margin category, it was growing fast, and maybe most importantly, the values of these pet owners, health-conscious, willing to spend premium, overlapped quite a bit with the trends they were trying to capture in their human food lines, too.
Oh, okay, so it felt like a natural extension, almost.
In a way, yes. And that's where Blue Buffalo comes in. They were already a leader, maybe the leader, in that natural pet food space.
With a really loyal following, I remember.
Extremely loyal, especially among those more affluent, well-informed pet owners who were driving that premium trend. Buying Blue Buffalo was essentially a shortcut for General Mills.
A shortcut to getting a big piece of this really attractive growing market.
Precisely. A major foothold, almost overnight.
Okay, so the appeal of getting into pet food makes sense, given their own challenges and the market growth. But you mentioned the regional aspect being key. How did they really zero in on Blue Buffalo using that regional data? It wasn't just luck, right?
Oh, not at all.
No.
They went way beyond just looking at overall pet food sales. They used very specific region-based consumer intelligence. Their research teams were really digging deep.
How deep? What kinds of things were they looking at?
They were segmenting the U.S. market based on several critical factors, things like pet ownership density, just, where are the most pets?
Makes sense. More pets, more potential customers.
Right. Then average household income. Because let's face it, premium pet food costs more.
Sure.
They also looked really closely at health consciousness scores for different areas.
Yeah.
Where are people generally more focused on health and wellness? And of course, just overall spending habits in those regions.
So this idea of wanting natural pet food wasn't just spread evenly across the country.
Not even close.
Eh,
What the data showed was that this demand was really, really concentrated, mostly in major metropolitan areas.
Okay, which ones?
Places with younger populations, higher disposable incomes, and generally a taste for, premium lifestyle products. Think San Francisco, Seattle, New York, even Austin. These popped up as key hubs.
You can almost picture the consumer profile there, right? Someone living in the city, maybe focused on their own organic diet, wanting the same for their pet.
That's exactly the insight. And understanding this wasn't just interesting data, it directly shaped their acquisition and growth strategy.
How so?
Yeah.
What do they do with that regional knowledge?
Well, a couple things. First, it showed them not just where Blue Buffalo was already strong, but where the next wave of growth potential was. Maybe in areas where those natural food trends were just starting to emerge.
So they could target expansion efforts.
Exactly. And General Mills could use its existing distribution muscle in those up-and-coming regions to really push Blue Buffalo, maybe cross-promote it.
Smart. Leverage their existing infrastructure. What else?
The regional insights also showed differences in how people bought pet food. This was crucial.
Like online versus in stores.
Precisely. Online sales were much bigger in those dense urban areas. But in more suburban spots, people were still relying heavily on the big box pet specialty retailers.
Okay, so channel strategy was key too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Knowing that influenced everything from their logistics planning to where they focused their marketing dollars after the acquisition. It was about understanding the what, the where, and the how of consumer behavior.
It sounds incredibly detailed, not just buying a brand, but understanding its whole ecosystem, region by region.
That's the crux of it. That level of granular understanding allows for a much more efficient and targeted way to integrate the brand and actually grow it.
Okay, let's shift focus a little. Beyond the numbers and the regions, how important was the actual brand itself? The feeling of Blue Buffalo and how it fit with consumer lifestyles.
Oh, hugely important. You've nailed a really critical piece here. General Mills knew that for modern consumers, especially when it involves something as emotional as pets, brand authenticity matters a lot.
And Blue Buffalo had really cultivated a specific image, hadn't they?
They really had. Their whole reputation was built around this idea of holistic pet care.
Hmm.
Natural ingredients, no artificial preservatives, really positioning themselves at the premium end.
And their marketing always seemed to hit that emotional note, the pet owner bond.
Exactly. That whole part of the family narrative, it resonated deeply. Now, General Mills, obviously known for human food, still carries this legacy of quality and trust.
Right. Decades of being in people's kitchens.
And the research suggested that this established trust could actually act as a bridge for consumers. It wouldn't feel like a totally random company suddenly making pet food.
Interesting. So there was a potential connection there, even across categories.
Potentially,
Yeah.
yes. And more research, again looking regionally, found something fascinating. In areas where people were already buying a lot of organic food for themselves or were really into health supplements.
Like where?
Think places like Boulder, Colorado, or Portland, Oregon, maybe San Diego. In those kinds of places, Blue Buffalo's story wasn't just about pet food. It fit into a broader lifestyle choice.
Ah, so it wasn't just a product, it was part of an identity for those consumers.
You got it. Buying Blue Buffalo felt aligned with their overall values. And preserving that alignment, that brand equity, was absolutely crucial for General Mills post-acquisition.
How did they manage that? Big corporations sometimes tend to absorb the smaller brand's identity.
They were smart about it. They recognized that risk. The strategy was basically to let Blue Buffalo keep operating with a fair amount of autonomy, keep its voice, its mission.
But use General Mills' resources behind the scenes.
Exactly. Leverage the scale, the distribution, the marketing power, but don't smother the brand's soul. It was a delicate balance.
And that balance was guided by data.
Heavily. By both demographic data, who the customers were, and psychographic data, understanding their attitudes, their lifestyles, their motivations. It wasn't just guesswork.
Okay, so pulling back to the big picture now, if you had to summarize the main lessons from this whole General Mills Blue Buffalo story, what would they be?
I think the biggest one, honestly, is just the sheer power of getting really granular with your consumer research, understanding those regional differences.
Right. Not just looking at national trends, which can be misleading.
Totally. Companies often focus on the big picture, global or national trends. But this deal really highlights the value in understanding how people behave differently in different places, how they shop, what they really care about, what they'll actually pay more for.
So it's that hyper-local understanding that was the real key here, not just seeing pet food is growing.
Precisely. General Mills didn't just see the category growth. They understood where it was happening most intensely and why it was happening there, because they dissected all those regional nuances.
That's a huge lesson for any company thinking about diversifying or buying another brand.
Absolutely. The takeaway is don't overlook geography and lifestyle. They're not side notes. They can be central to consumer decisions.
So thinking local, not just global, can be the path to growth.
It really can be. Tailoring how you go to market based on those local preferences, that can build incredible loyalty
Mhm.
and really help you penetrate a market much more effectively.
And what about protecting the acquired brand?
That's the other key lesson.
Yeah.
Especially with brands like Blue Buffalo that have a strong identity, maybe a mission-driven feel. You have to protect that authenticity after you buy them. That's crucial for long-term success, letting them be themselves to a degree.
So it sounds like this successful integration wasn't just dictated from the General Mills boardroom.
Not at all. It was really built from the ground up, based on deep consumer data and that crucial regional insight.
Okay, perfect. Before we wrap, let's hit that fast fact you mentioned. It seems to really tie this all together.
Yeah, it's a good one. So back in 2018, the year they bought them, Blue Buffalo did about $1.3 billion in sales.
Okay, significant number.
But here's the kicker. Nearly three-quarters of that revenue, almost 75%, came from just two channels: pet specialty stores and online sales.
Wow.
And guess where those sales were heavily concentrated?
Let me guess. Those health-conscious metro areas you talked about.
Bingo. Right back to those key regions like the coasts and specific urban centers.
That really drives it home. It shows their strategy wasn't just theoretical. The money was already flowing exactly where the regional insights pointed.
Precisely. It confirms that they were tapping into where Blue Buffalo was already winning and understanding the how and where of that success.
Okay, so wrapping this up, our deep dive really shows the General Mills Blue Buffalo deal was way more than just buying a brand name.
Much more. It was a really strategic move,
Yeah.
deeply rooted in understanding those regional consumer vibes.
Allowing them to tap into this big shift in the pet care market, but in a very targeted way.
And it just highlights again how critical that detailed market research is,
Yeah,
especially when you're making these huge multi-billion-dollar bets.
definitely. Now, here's something for you, the listener, to think about. Consider your own shopping habits, the everyday things you buy. How much do you think regional trends or just your own lifestyle influence those choices?
Yeah, and what does that suggest about the strategies companies might be using, maybe even without you realizing it?
What other deals that look simple on the surface might have these really complex layers of consumer insight driving them? Something to chew on. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.